How you doing everyone, it's Jordan here from SwitchWatch. Now today I'm very excited to give you a review of The Legend of Mana, an old PS1 game remastered for the Switch and PS4, so let's jump in and find out what it's all about. In anticipation of my review for this, I did the unthinkable. I went in prepared. I went back to play the original PS1 game on my Vita, and just like this version, I really enjoyed it. I didn't play all of it on Vita since Square Enix provided the Switch review code early enough, but let me tell you, the PS1 version is probably the best looking game on that system, and I feel really sad for my childhood that Europe never got this back in the days. So what's it all about? Well, The Legend of Mana, like most games in the Mana series, is an action RPG. As you explore dungeons and fields, you bump into strategically placed enemies, which starts an encounter, and you wail on them with attacks. You have a quick attack as well as a strong attack that will leave you a little vulnerable for a moment. You can block and even jump. Special attacks and magic can be mapped to the shoulder buttons, and these will become unlocked as you gain experience with the handful of different weapons available. Whether you fancy a sword, a spear, staff, axe, or even a long-range bow, I was surprised by the variety on offer here. You can even choose which one you want to start the game with, but you can buy different ones later if it doesn't gel with you too well. I wouldn't say that there's major tactical depth in this game compared to other action RPGs on the market. You just attack while avoid being hit. It's also certainly not as precise as some modern efforts, unsurprisingly. It will take you a little bit of getting used to the movement, as it's not full analog in the battles. You sort of shuffle around on an invisible grid in the manner of someone casually ice skating. I don't know, that's my analogy, I'm sticking with it. It's not a particularly tough game. If you're fighting by yourself, then there is the fear of getting stun locked, which is a little unpolished, but it's not really a problem once you have a partner or pet, or even both, by your side in battle. The AI partners are mostly very adept at helping take down foes using their abilities wisely, except when it comes to picking up XP. They just don't want to level up, which is kind of annoying since the XP crystals do disappear after a few seconds. An enticing prospect is that of a second player who can control your partner, which actually ramps up the enjoyment much more. Going on an adventure together, helping each other in battles, it's great, and I would have loved to have played the entire game like this, but there was only so many shopping trips I was willing to bribe my wife with. I have my limits. I ain't making too many sacrifices. The thing that stands out about the original game is that it's easily one of the most beautiful looking games on the system. Absolutely stunning hand-drawn backgrounds. Every screen is a work of art. The amount of exquisite detail that a 3D game could only dream of back then. It's even better looking than most games now, if I'm being brutally honest. For this remastered version, it's brought into full HD, allowing the colors to pop off the screen. Honestly, I think people who played this game back in the day with full nostalgia goggles on, this is probably how they remember it looking, which is a testament to the respectful work they've done in this remaster. It seems less quaint than before, maybe a little too clean, but to be fair, I think it just shows how amazing the original was. I think it looks beautiful. One issue from the original still stands though, is that I think due to the locations being made with the art in mind first, and then usability in game second, navigating them can be a little troublesome from time to time. It can be quite difficult to discern where a transition point between scenes is, especially in the dungeon areas, which are generally full to the brim with so much detail. It's like playing Where's Wally for the next area. Due to the crisper graphics in this remaster, it's less troublesome than the original, but still, it would have been nice to have the ability to press a button on the controller to highlight where the exits are. That was a lifesaver in Final Fantasy VII, and it would have been easy to implement here. Speaking of the map, the world map is a bit of an odd thing. As you complete quests, you'll be handed artifacts which allow you to place new areas to explore. You can plop them down on the world map, not quite anywhere you please, but you still have a lot of choice. Something akin to the Final Fantasy Tactics Advance games. A big deal was and has been made of this feature, and while I'm always up for some world customization, I don't think the game does a good job of explaining the point. Basically, depending on where you put them and how far away from your home they are, it decides which monsters and which items will appear. The further away, the higher the level of the monsters. It also gives them different elemental leanings, which is even more complicated. However, I had to look this part up since I had no idea what the point of it was. And apparently, it needs advanced planning if you want to get exactly what you want. It's almost like the game wants to keep its little mysteries to itself. They probably should have called it Secret of Mana. Because yeah, it is quite secretive. There's loads of little things here that you may miss, not even see at all if you don't stumble upon them. You could completely miss the animal raising aspect, the crafting, plenty of missions, and even the proper ending of the game. There's mechanics going on underneath the hood that you won't even know exist. If you're looking for an action RPG that may play slightly differently with each playthrough, then this is definitely a good one. You'll find yourself battling different enemies with different levels and elementals depending on where you place them. You may even open up new quests that you didn't see the first time, or even new pets to join your team. It also helps that a New Game Plus adds new difficulty options. This is a very replayable RPG. There are still some archaic quirks to this game, such as events not triggering unless you talk to one specific person, and sometimes not until you've struck up a conversation with them for the third time. I'm not even joking. So yeah, remember to talk to everybody at least 3 times, otherwise you may be scratching your head at like, where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do? You probably just didn't talk to enough people enough times. But some things have been updated. Well, there's some tweaks. We've talked about the graphics, but there's also an autosave feature. Basically, every screen you change, you'll autosave. You can also save manually at any point via the menu, kind of rendering the save statues obsolete. The game isn't particularly tough on the first playthrough, so it's more of a convenience than anything major. Can I also say that I massively appreciate the fact that you can auto run now? You don't need to hold the buttons down, which actually killed my fingers playing on the Vita. There's the inclusion of a minigame that was once exclusive to Japan because they actually got the accessory needed for it, which is kind of like the Dreamcast VMU, where you could take your tame monsters out on little adventures with you. It's super basic. You roll a number and then walk across a board. You may pick up an item, you may heal yourself at a town, or end up in a battle where whichever monster rolls the highest number wins. It's good for gaining quick experience, but nothing I would spend time in. It kind of looks like a pixelated mess on the TV, if I'm being honest. But it's just nice that Westerners can now have the chance to see what it's all about. You can turn off most enemy encounters, which is a godsend when backtracking through dungeons. Especially after you realize you've got to the end of the dungeon, but you forgot to talk to the person at the beginning of the dungeon for the 7th time to actually activate the quest. That happened more times than I would like to admit. This game is the Dark Souls of quest activation. Now, battles aren't overly common, at least not for the genre standards, but this feature does help your sanity somewhat. In terms of value, it's a bit of a tough one. It's not that it's not great value for money, it's just how much you'll get out of it may differ wildly from person to person, and completely unintentionally. But firstly, just to point out, in the West, this is a digital-only release, $30 in the US and in euros, and £25 in the UK on the eShop. However, if you're all about physicals, like myself, then there is a physical version in Japan and Asia, and the best thing about it is that it does have English. The Switch is region free, and you pop it in and it will play in English, or French, German, Spanish if your console is set to that language. So it's perfect for importing. There's even a PS4 version as well. You get to have a proper physical item, something tangible, something of worth to keep forever or pass on to your kids if we're getting morbid. Just like Final Fantasy IX Saga Frontier, this is going to be essential RPG import, and if you want to own it yourself, then there are links below as to where you can grab a copy for yourself in the description and the pinned comment. If you do that, then it also massively helps support the team at the same time. It helps us keep making content for you, and in return, because we love you, you can also get a very nice 5% off if you use our links and enter the coupon code SwitchWatchTV while checking out. That's all one word, SwitchWatchTV, while checking out for 5% off any physical item from PlayAsia. And yes, I think this game is worth it. In terms of how long it will take you, could range from 20 hours to 40, depending on how bewildered you are by it. This is a very free-flowing game. As I said, you can completely miss aspects, mechanics, quests, and even whole storylines. There's not actually one main storyline here. There are 3 smaller story arcs and 1 ending quest. You can happily only complete one of those without taking notice of the others. It all depends where you place your dungeons and towns and who you talk to and just how nosy you actually are. Now, there's elements of FOMO here. I know you want to see everything, I get it, but I implore you not to use a guide, at least for the first time around, because a lot of the love that I have for this game is just seeing how my adventure ended up. These were my decisions, this was my adventure, and this is how it resulted. Kind of like a choose your own adventure book. Remember those? Imagine when you got to a crossroads, a decision you had to make, and you just looked at every result before choosing one. That kind of takes the point away. Once you have finished and then look up the 60 quests available and all the little mechanics going on in the background, there's loads here. This is a really packed game. This all stems from the fact that, as stated, there's not really one overarching plot. Not really. This game is basically full of side quests. It should just be called Side Quests the Game. Each mission is its own little adventure. It's full of character, endlessly humorous. Some of them are one-offs, some of them span a couple of missions, others a handful, and it's great. I know people don't like the fact there's not really a proper story here, but it reminds me of my favorite TV shows like Stargate SG-1. Yes, there was some overarching narrative, but I loved the one-off episodes the most. Nothing to advance the narrative, just a fun adventure, a new place, new people, new situation. And this is kind of like that. Always something different. Always a wacky situation to get out of, or interesting person to help out. And they're not all the same either. It's not just go here, kill the boss. No, some of them are, but some have environmental puzzles, some have adventure aspects where you won't even pick up your sword. Some will take 10 minutes, some may take over an hour. The variety is special here. It's very, very different than your standard RPG, and I really like it for that. And I'd say that this game can almost take over your life if you get completely sucked into some aspects like the monster raising aspect or the golem creation tools, weapon crafting. If you're into maximizing your output, this could take over your life. Now, the soundtrack is one of the highlights of the game, and no doubt considering it's A, Square Enix RPG, and B, composed by the legendary Yoko Shimomura, whose credits reach as far as the Mario & Luigi RPGs, Street Fighter 2, and most famously the Kingdom Hearts series, amongst many others in a vast portfolio of great gaming soundtracks. She herself stated that the Legend of Mana soundtrack is one that expressed herself more than any other, justifying her switch to Square Enix from Capcom, as she wanted to do more high fantasy classical music than the arcade games that her former employer wanted to work on. Here you can choose between the original soundtrack and a remastered one, which as far as my half-deaf ears could tell, wasn't a whole lot different. It sounded a little more cleaner, slightly more reverb on it. Don't go in expecting massive changes because, to be fair, it certainly wasn't necessary. And as a nice touch, you can listen to the whole soundtrack, both versions, in the menus. Overall, look, I can get why people may need that overarching narrative to drive them forwards and maybe be driven slightly mad by the secretiveness of what's on offer here, but man, this was such a refreshing game to play for me. I loved that I had experienced a new mini story every time. The combat, while basic, does the job, and I love that there's a monster raising aspect here. It's funny, charming, plenty on offer, even if you miss most of it the first time around. Two people playing together opens this up even more for a great time. It's musically and visually brilliant, and it stands amongst the greats. Side Quest the game, Legend of Mana, is a game that I finally had the chance to play, and I am so happy I did. It's an 8.5 out of 10. Alright, many thanks for watching. If you watched all the way through, what a legend you are. The longer you watch, the more YouTube likes it. So if you're one of those legends, leave me a tree emoji in the comments in honor of the Mana Tree. Big thanks to our executive producers Dane Wilkinson, God of Resin, Boombox, Brent McLean, Jonathan Room, Organica, Santa Tartaruga, Alolan Jojo, Alexander Cato, JCross7776, Elissa Punky Dooster, Michael Del Polito, Cigar Trucker, Cartoon Soren, Jack Severus, and Velos. Thank you ever so much for your wonderful support, and our other YouTube members. Plus those who used our purchase links to get a physical import. Check out some of our other content. I talked about this game yesterday in my weekly physical series. James takes you through all the digital bargains on Sunday, and also we have some nice tasty reviews. We'll see you guys over there. Have a good one.